Right. So let's start with a little bit of quick interaction, introduction of what you do. So I think people would be able to relate to it a little deeply and come back with questions that are going to help them saying what questions they could ask. So go ahead with your little deeply.
So my name is Kuldeep. I run evangelism and customer success at CleverTap. We used to be WizRocket. We're a big data platform. We help you analyze, big data analytics as well as push notifications for your apps. So one of the key things that we do is we really help apps grow and engage with the users better. So, and we come across a lot of these amazing growth stories, the real micro growth stories and the macro growth stories. So.
Hi guys, so myself Deepit, I'm one of the co-founders of an app called InShorts. So we started with a name called News in Shorts, where we used to provide news articles within 60 words. So people can just open our app, swipe, and within 10 minutes they are just updated in a clutter-free manner. We have recently rebranded ourselves to InShorts to address the general content consumption and discoverability needs of people from anything that informs them, from TED Talks to videos to Quora answers, tweets, anything that informs you is a part of our content. So the essential proposition is that if you want to stay informed, the default app that you should open is InShorts. So that's what we do at InShorts. I'm leading currently the product and strategy team at InShorts.
Yeah, hi guys, and thanks to Santosh to actually inviting me here and speaking about mobile growth. What I do is at Times Internet, I'm building a fintech vertical with focus on, with the first product that we launched is Smart Spends. And what it does is actually helps you stay on top of your spends and also help you save money. And it's automatically, what it does, it actually looks at the SMS inbox that you have and analyzes that SMS inbox, collates all the data and helps you, see everything about your spends in one app. And it's completely automated. So we just launched like 1.5 months ago. We crossed 100,000 installs, so it's doing good. And I would share a few things around that as well. And I essentially started my career at InMobi as the first employee, first product guy. Looked at the whole thing from 0 ad impressions to almost 2 billion ad impressions. After that, I moved on to start my own venture, Money Sites, which recently got acquired by Times Internet, and that's how I ended up into Times Internet. So through and through, yeah.
So we have a variety of speakers, and that'll be an interactive session, so you can come up with a lot of questions, which is finance, news, and Kuldeep on the other side, a CleverTap and an analytics platform that will give you more cases and insights around how people have been using best practices and things like that. So let's start with Kuldeep. Kuldeep, like when as I remember, WizRocket was focusing on understanding user behavior, right? And that's how I know the platform when it started. But then recently, when you kind of repositioned or rebranded to mobile app, what's your take about kind of lot of startups who are right now web focused? They would like to bring an app download is going to take time, but you have still a chunk of users that you have still on the web. What is that they should do between this transition between web and app, right? That's something that many of these startups would be interested to know, because we are not looking out for just do it right now, right web doing it. So what would you suggest to people that they are just transitioning from the web to app?
So, I mean, the user communication on the web is really broken, right? I mean, on the web you buy transactions, on the mobile, the adage is that on the web you buy transactions, on the mobile you buy users, right? Your marketing spends on the web are all about getting a user to transact. And when you want the user to transact, again, there's another little ticket that you pay out, right? On the mobile, once you have a user, you have them, right? The big question of our times is how to get people from the web to mobile. Yes. My view on this is that we've seen some extreme cases where people say, we're just going to shut down our websites and be on mobile. And I think for better or for worse, this week will be the litmus test of how well that has worked, right? So we actually have going into the first big sale of the year with mobile-only players. So that's I think that will teach us a lot. But as far as numbers are concerned, what we really see is the people who make a dedication. I mean, I spent 5 years at Nokia, right? From 2009 to 2014 before we got acquired by Microsoft. And if there is one thing that we saw, right, when people say that we live in a mobile-only world, they're not lying. The web the reason the web seems such an important task is the voluble minority, the people who have more money in their, who have disposable cash in their pockets are the one transacting. So there's a lot of people who say, you know, web is where the money is. No, web is where the money is today. Mobile is where your money is tomorrow. So, you know, if you're building a product today, it better be mobile first, even mobile only. And, you know, it goes against my grain because I spent 3 years evangelizing Windows Phone. But I see some player going Android only. Really, if focus is what you talk about, then really in today's market, you want to build one app, you want to forego the web. If you want your users to transact first, you want them to do in an app, and that will pay dividends going over. And I'm sure you know, our friend Mukesh will share more on that. But you know, the only way you can get go from the web to mobile is, my thing is, you know, sustain the web if you have a sustainable web business.
Sure, sure.
But the first transaction that you win on mobile, the first transaction you win from your customers, you better win it on mobile, because that's where the future is.
Great.
Clearly.
So now when we're talking about money and, you know, first transaction, so let me bring Mukesh on the same one, because in your platform, you're talking about understanding users' behavior, understanding their SMS, you know, making people draw, or making them intelligent, or making their day-to-day of bringing their finance, bringing their wealth into a better, you know, kind of platform, right? You will be developing a platform which is understanding where you are spending and where you should spend and how it should be managed.
Yes.
How do you see that, you know, okay, in that way, in that context, now bring the same, you know, the insights that Kuldeep said, is that web, yes, we can personalize, we can do a lot of things, and in the mobile offers us a huge platform to do everything behind the scene.
Correct.
So how do you do that? What have you been seeing the patterns in that?
Yeah. So I think from there are 2-3 things around it, right? One is that when we hit upon Smartsmiths, it was about how do we solve a particular problem at scale. Now, inherently in India, because the mobile wave is so strong and there are so many catalysts externally, it makes sense to actually go mobile first, right? And mobile is actually, this is the first time that mobile is enabling us to solve problems with very high frictions at scale. Like when we were user testing, it was very clear that people are maintaining diaries, Excels, you know, they're putting their expenses on Gmail to actually track it, and then there are manual entry apps, and there is way too much friction. And we hit upon the whole SMS idea, which says that there is already a transaction data residing to actually smartly analyze and remove that friction altogether. And the beauty is that because it's a mobile first solution, it has a higher chances of scale. And coming to the second point of, you know, web, I think it also depends on what is the category that you are looking at. If it is a very high intent category, like fintech, right? And when I say fintech, and I'm talking about the financial services bit. So people actually look at, so there are a few things around fintech, which around the whole space. It's perceived to be very complex by the consumers, and they want to get done with it very quickly. Now, if they want to get done with it quickly, they have a very high intent of actually searching and then going off to do it, right? So in those scenarios, I think desktop still would make a lot of sense, because the search is broken on mobile, right? So I think it's a combination of few things that we are coming together. And for us, we are starting with mobile definitely because it scales well, but I think we'll have to figure out ways to leverage the SEO or SEM that we do.
Right. So now that you brought the point saying, yes, there is a search there is an intent, the user is searching something, and then you are able to get them the app and download it. So now let's bring the download as one of the biggest thing, right? So, you know, out of all the participants, how many of you are here with a mobile app and having, let's say, 5,000 downloads? Quite a bit. Some of you who are early at the stages, I made a couple of them with 100 or 200 downloads, let's say. 100 to 200 downloads, couple of them. Okay, so let's bring out that download as a question, right? Because this is where everybody's mind, right? In the web, we had a lot of mechanisms. We had paid, we had organic, we could get the users. A lot of practice has been established. People know how to do about it, how to go about it. But app today, it's been seen as, you know, throw offers, download, get users however you want to do. So download is very, you know, it's the same world that people did it by writing anything, everything, and getting users, and then figuring out. So what's your take? You know, what's your process? What's your philosophy of download?
Like, if you mean that how do we start in a space where there are like a million apps, I think we have to, the way I would actually go about doing that is really figure out one channel which is ROI positive, which can scale. That's the whole objective of customer acquisition, right? That we are able to actually figure out few channels which are ROI positive and which can work at scale. But from a starting perspective, it is very tough to figure out, to do all of it in one shot. So I think the first channel that anybody by default actually goes to is Facebook. Right? Now, inside Facebook, there are multiple things around it. Right from the targeting option that it offers, and there are like very simple hacks around the whole optimization bit, because I was doing the mobile ad network, so I understand how they actually. So one of the things that we discovered. So the whole idea is that I'm sharing what we have learned when we started off. Right, is Facebook's whenever you actually launch a campaign on Facebook, they actually have a default coefficient attached to every ad for the performance. Like Facebook doesn't know the performance of the ad till the time it is launched, right? And it has actually gone through some, say, million impressions. And it actually gives a more than average coefficient of performance. So whenever you actually start a new campaign, you will see the costs are better. And as you move forward, the cost will keep on falling down. So one of the ways that we that we actually kind of hit upon was to actually figure out how can we actually launch multiple campaigns in short amount of time, and also leverage this particular simple understanding of Facebook. There are like 10 more things that we can discuss, but in the interest of time,
Sure.
I can.
So I'll bring Deepith also in this, because when I was chatting with him, fantastic app, kind of like bites of news, which is what we are all interested in. But Deepith had a very different take on downloads, right? The kind of campaigns that you run, you're saying that you don't do narrowed, you did a broad. So can you just share some insight on that?
Yeah, so the kind of campaigns that you run completely depends on the product proposition that you have. Like that is something that you have to always keep in mind. People most of the time tell you that targeting is really important. But sometimes it is also important that you need to find out your product, which is the target market that it is most creating, where is it more, where are the higher chances of customer adoption. So when we were running campaigns, we found out that it's the product. Intuitively, you feel that the product is a general mass usage product. Like say a 45-year-old person who is an office goer is also equally likely to use it as a 22-year college student. So then the entire data then exactly maps onto the smartphone incidence in the country. So the demographics that we have is actually exactly like the smartphone incidence of the country. So there's higher smartphone incidence in the 18 to 24, 35 category, and then there's lower smartphone incidence going forward. So it exactly matches that. So then it doesn't make sense to do demographic targeting that much, because in fact we've also seen that senior adopters of our product are more likely to stick onto our product, because they are not into the habit of installing, uninstalling, installing and uninstalling so much. So if they are satisfied with your product, then they'll stick on. So this is something which is really counterintuitive.
In fact, same thing happened with us as well. We thought that smart spends, being a very money-related stuff, it needs a very focused audience to go with. And but the whole idea was to actually first figure out what is the segment that is responding on Facebook, and then double down on that segment on Facebook. We actually started a generic campaign, which is all top metros, and a simple benefit, communication, which says that instantly kind of know where you are spending, and that is till date the best, most it is delivering the best results across all the other campaigns. So initially intuition is required, but a lot of experiments are obviously kind of have to be figured out as we move on. So similar case with Dipit as well, where it went counterintuitive. So for us also it went completely counterintuitive.
Super. So let me bring Kuldeep, because you might have come across with a lot of case studies, varieties, right? And then again, we're taking two scenarios where they've tried broader and they've figured out what the demographic match and who is really installing and keeping it rather than just downloading it. What's your take on download? And how do you, have you seen some cases where it has gone exceptionally, exponential graph for no reasons or for some hack? right? That was, many people would have thought, no, that's not possible. Any
So,
such-
true exponential growth is surprisingly still rare. I mean, you hear cases, but you'll always, so whenever you see something become extremely popular, there's always a lot of money being spent, right? We finally in a place where, you can literally buy downloads, right? And I'm not talking about instant downloads, but, we actually have now mediums where you can spend money and you can install ads that are honest and they'll actually get you downloads, right? It's very cool when they were mentioning, I was saying that, one of the best correlation I've seen about how you can get downloads, right? The intuition says anybody who starts a download, and there were some people who were saying, they have 100, 200 downloads here. I'm actually not a very big fan of friends and family downloads. That's where you start. The problem is that skews you for life. Friends and family downloads are the worst downloads you can get because those are the most forgiving customers. And the patterns that you build during those time will actually, because you'll have one guy who's downloading apps, what the hell is this? To me, the correlation, and we've seen a few hundred apps that get started on, they have a few users and then you start seeing them. If you look at a typical ad install, install ad format, right? It's got about three columns, right? It's about the size of a POS LCD display, right? And if you cannot fit your ad's core game loop, that what people will do within those three lines, right? Forget about getting installs. Those are probably misinstalls, or those are probably incented downloads and so on and so forth, right? To me, I mean, you look at what Dipit said, right? Top news of the day in 60 words or less, right? Manage all your expenses based on your SMS inbox, right? Think of any app that starts to get a lot of downloads and it probably has a description that's within one line. Now I know it's banal and it's cliched and people say it again and again, but if there's one thing that will get you your first 5,000 downloads is this, that when people say, what was that app that lets you organize your expenses by SMS inbox, right? And now, thankfully his category is getting popular and there are a couple of people and you have competitors, but people will come up with those names. But the point is, people shouldn't have to remember your app's name. They should be able to remember that one line that you have, and that will get you downloads. You will actually be able to use, the social virality only happens if people are able to actually, in fact, describe your app's value proposition to each other. Doesn't matter what you say. What matters is what people who installed your app say to each other. Right. Otherwise, you're pretty much a lost case. Anyways,
Sure,
right?
sure.
And I
So
think
that brings also into the context saying that, the kind of example that you are setting it out is that it's more organic, it's more involved, you are really putting yourself in the front of, such a large audience who need to relate to you why exactly he or she had downloaded, and that should be in the, in somewhere in the back of the memory,
Yeah.
right? Not a,
I'm a bit of a fan of, investing a little bit in advertising, waiting for the organic downloads to come through, right? You essentially want to do a bit of a stopgap thing, right? And, buy a little bit, wait for some time and see if, learn from that. How can I get, because, every paid install ad that you get, right? You really want a ratio of some organic downloads to come from that. And if that's not happening, you need to go back and fix your app. Otherwise, no one has enough money to get to 10 million downloads with just money. I mean, some will probably prove me wrong and have that much money. But, you really want to get those first 5,000 downloads and see that, hey, how many organic downloads are driven from those? And, maybe fix your product until that point of time when you say, okay, fine. When we get 5,000 paid downloads, right, it results in another 5 or 10,000 organic downloads. So that may be a little optimistic, but that's what you really want. You want your app to be, your app should be, how do you put it? Should the ability to go viral to some extent.
Sure.
Otherwise, it's not working out. If people can't describe to each other, then
sure. Now that brings out another good, sort of idea. Like we see Uber and Ola doing a lot of referral-based downloads, right? That has been a very popular. Bring your friends, get 350 rupees off. Uber has driven a fantastic campaigns. Ola has done similarly. So what's your take? I mean, like, do you think, being an analytics company on the other side, I don't want to take names, but, do you have more cases where mobile might be the best referral medium, compared to web, because you are here being referred by a friend, and you are pretty much right there on the mobile. You can take an action rather than on a web, which is sitting on an email that you see later. There's no instant, no real time, right? While real time with a referral might be a case. Is there something that you have come across? Would you suggest to the audience?
assuming you have the money to run a referral program that rich,
Sure.
right? That's fine. I mean, that's inducing, and I believe that's a very expensive growth hack,
Sure.
right? But say you're building a product with the assumption that you have unlimited money, then sure. But I think what works better is if you deliver ongoing value to one customer, that customer will suggest that So there are two things you get, right? If when you're telling a customer that, hey, use this code when you book your first cab ride, and you get $200 and I get $200, right? But there's another thing, right? If I am telling somebody that, hey, why are you bothering with your expenses? Why don't you try this app? Look how easy managing my expenses, right? I'm still gaining some value. I'm getting social currency, right?
Sure.
And people value social currency over whatever value you get. So my point is that if you were delivering fantastic value, say for example you did not get 200 off on your first cab ride, I don't think it will make a substantial difference. At least it's my considered opinion that if you have money, you can accelerate that to a little bit. It probably creates some distortions, where people try to sign up again and again with the same ID, and you have to make your app more complex, and then try uninstalling one of these cab apps and then installing it again from a different phone, and you say, hey, you've already activated this app once, and it just causes distortion that are probably not worth it.
But sure.
You want social proof more than anything else. You want people to tell about that. I'm smart. I'm smart. I discovered this app.
Yeah. I would kind of slightly differ, because what you said was completely right. Right? Mobile actually has all your contacts, and the whole referral as a medium can really work well if it is instrumented correctly. But I think from a stage perspective, in the acquisition cycle, I would go to referral after, say, few months into refining my product, into figuring out which segments are actually doing good, and then probably a referral campaign could serve as a catalyst for me to go to the next level, right? And right now there are multiple tools around referrals, like branch metrics and all these guys, which are phenomenal, which are built on top of Airbnb's referral campaigns, which have been world famous. But I think that, and it's easier also because of the tools now that are coming into play to make it easy. So there is no harm in actually trying referral for sure, but it has to be kind of timed properly into the acquisition cycle.
Yeah, I think two great points into that. So now while we're talking this, I think download is a world on its own, and as we've gone through a lot of insights, it's demographic. You need to find out what's your right model, how much you can do in organic, how much you can add in paid, and then accordingly you decide how much you're going to scale in from there, right?
Plus, I think from a whole, I think the mobile growth stack has very clear foundation analytics. If you're not able to kind of really figure out by channels what is the effectiveness and how are you clearly defining effectiveness. Like for example, everybody talks about channel effectiveness, but how do you really define it when you are actually kind of doing it and wanting to acquire customers of quality? And there are two dimensions to actually look at it. One is retention and re-engagement, retention and engagement. Then how do you actually define engagement? And how do you measure it by channels, right? Sure. And till the time you're not really sorted on this whole cycle of which channel is bringing what customers, at what price, and are they engaging, are they giving the right kind of ARPU? And it becomes tricky when you really don't have an in-app purchase kind of model, because then you can actually easily say that my clear metrics for the channel is that what is the ARPU that I'm generating, right? How much revenue per user is kind of coming. In cases where there is no in-app purchase kind of model, it becomes tricky. So you need to kind of figure out what is, so the way we do it at SmartSpence is we actually have defined events which actually signify engagement for us. Like the first registration, which is a silent registration right now, is an event which is, say, has a dollar value of $1. And then you benchmark all the other events against that and say that by channel, what is the ARPU that you get? So it's like very simple way of superimposing the in-app purchase model on an app which is not having it. So that's one way to actually kind of really figure out, am I getting the quality from the channel man?
Right.
And
yeah, so I think you've touched a right point around the retention, which I was coming across. Now, retention becomes much more difficult game, right? For example, not many apps are right now there. On a web, you have a lot of things to optimize, a lot of things to benchmark, because you have competitors who are operating out of there. But when you're doing an app, you might be the first mover, you might have an innovative app coming out, you don't know who you really benchmarking, right? So I think, Deepit, coming to your thing, it's a very new game, right? Today, your competitor can be anybody. Could be Google News, could be Twitter, it could be a lot of that. So who you benchmark? How do you decide, here is the app, here is the iteration that we are going to do, here are the features that we are, here are the behaviors that we are learning from the users, but then who we benchmark again? How do you decide that at a strategy level, at a product level? How do you decide those?
Yeah, so I think that's the most tricky part of a product, especially a mobile product, and especially once even more tricky if what you are trying to do is something new. Like there's no comparables across the world. So for us, I think a very important role as to what we think should be should be a good benchmark. So suppose in terms of screen views. So if a person comes to our app and browses, so suppose today we publish around say 100 stories a day, and a daily active user comes and browses through say more than 90% of those stories, then we are doing really well. So that's a very good benchmark. But if we say that we are publishing 100 stories a day, and if a DAU on an average comes and reads only say 30 stories as he drops off in that whole cycle of the session, then that means there is a scope for improvement. That means there was some irrelevance in those articles that he was browsing. So from there we spotted that, okay, that means relevance is key. Sure. That means we should improve our personalization, bring about personalization as a product feature.
So pretty
Things
much in
like
your
that.
case, you are benchmarking against yourself or
Yeah.
your value, right? You're saying this is what the value we are supposed to be delivering, but
Yeah.
you know, it's not being
Yeah.
delivered in the way
Yeah.
that you want to do.
Yeah.
Now, Kuldeep, bringing you in this context, you know, because pretty much you're building an analytics platform which you will understand a lot of behaviors of the apps. Don't you know, what's your take around right now the statement that the problem statement that I explained, right? And you don't have a lot of apps in every categories. People are going to come up with a lot of new ideas, new concepts, you know, starting from a very offline SMS to bringing them on mobile, and then you don't have anything else to compete. How do you decide this benchmarking? What's going to be the kind of suggestion over the years? What should somebody look at benchmarking against? Is it just industry practice? Is it some sort of insights? Is it what's your take?
Well, benchmarking is surprisingly difficult. We are a very early stage market. I mean, I think you more than anybody knows, right, that I got so many active users today. Is this good? Is this bad? Is this too much, right? And one of the most difficult things for us to decide, right, when you look at you know, a few thousand companies and you look at the data flow through your system, right, you can make out, hey, this guy's bigger, that guy's smaller, and so on and so forth. But, you know, it's a surprisingly difficult question to answer because, you know, as I said, right, downloads can be bought, retention and engagement have to be earned. Yeah. And very few apps actually work hard enough to earn their engagement and retention. Yeah. So, you know, you see a lot of these small players, and, you know, me and Dipit were discussing earlier about these really small news guys who are trying to, you know, who are basically learning essentially from him and trying these little things. You know, you could compare yourself to another person in your category, sure. But you know, there would be so many flaws, right? Because you can measure that, okay, people come back every third day, every fourth day, right? You could take a look at your D3, D7 engagement or D3, D7 retention, sorry, and benchmark. But it still doesn't do justice to the whole this thing. As far as I'm concerned, from a benchmarking perspective, I think you take you know, you decide what your consumption event is, right? And you decide that at this point of time, my users are completely, and he kind of said the same thing, that maybe my goal is that, you know, as he said, maybe people want to I put in 100 stories out there every day, and as long as people consume 10% of them or 15% of them, to me that's a regular user, that's a user. I want to take every new user to that stage, right? But that doesn't really happen because what we see, right, that you buy a lot of installs, and by day 7, 95% of them are gone. Yeah. Right? Depending on categories, you know, some are less, some are more, but on an average, 95% are gone. But the really cool thing is that 30% of when we track uninstalls as a platform, and 30% of those people have never even launched the app before uninstalling. Wow. I mean, that's completely money down the drain, right? So you could benchmark these numbers, but I really think that at least at the stage of growth that we are right now, in most stages, right, most people don't really have a direct apples to apples comparison competitors,
sure.
because almost everybody's trying to learn and
absolutely, yeah. I just wanted to bring that point into there. Yeah. Now, you know, when we look at that, there is a big debate going on, right, where people are saying too many apps are going to be the backstage, you know, they are going to be there. As long as I interact with the system with a notification or something, that I'll keep it. Otherwise, don't really use the app in a big way, you know, as I could do it on the web. So, you know, notification is becoming a big game changer, right? Some people are getting it right. Some people could spam it, like, you know, like what we all faced in the beginning of the email era. Again, what's our what's your take? When you look at SMS now, you're building a platform which was supposed to be a spam-based SMS, and you built a beautiful platform to derive insights out of it, right? Now, while you are deriving the insight out of it, let's say if I'm a user, you got my spam cleaned, got my insight saying, Santosh, you should be investing in this, or putting money in this. Now you're going to notify me quite a bit of time. Are we going back to the spam world? How does the notification as a framework operates as an engagement, right? Yeah. So I want to bring two things. Correct. Is notification going to be a spam world in the future? Or is there a smart way that the notification could be one of the engagement, kind of framework for users to engage? What are the early kind of things that you've been seeing, or you think that practices that you are trying to bring out?
So I think definitely push notification is slowly becoming like a new spam, but essentially you really don't have too many levers when you're looking at re-engagement, right? So you need to have push notification very, very strongly done, and I think there are two components to it. At Sportsman's, we don't send notifications at all till now. Like, we send only notifications which are completely data-led and which are context-aware. So today, this whole spamming bit is coming into everybody's mind because none of the push notifications or very few push notifications are actually very data and context aware. So, if you just send it generically, then it will definitely be not worth it. And in fact, we get reviews saying that it is such a cool thing that I really don't get notification from Smartphones. That's right. That's
so okay.
crazy.
So that brings out the second question, which I'll bring out. Will bring out this. So that's where we are saying notification could be one of the great framework, right? Engagement framework that you can leverage to allow the user to take actions and still feel good about the app, even if I'm not opening the app every day 3 times, but I'm still engaged. What's again your kind of insights into that?
So if you say spam, right, you define spam as something that I didn't want, I hate it, sure. Right? If you send the user your first notification, and if the user thinks it's spam, then the user probably shouldn't have had your app in the first place, right? I mean, it's unintended communication. Yeah,
genuine.
Right? So, I was earlier talking about by the day 7, 95% of the users are gone. A very cool thing is, if you send people a first welcome push notification, right, that number drops by at least 5 to 10%. Right? Those 30% people who don't launch your app, if they launch your app and your app delivers value, your time to value of your app is instant, you see exactly what the app is doing, those users will stay on, right? But here's the thing, the really cool thing about, example Android is, right, when people launch your app, you can actually get their email addresses, right? So even after they uninstall your app, you can still reach out to those users saying that, hey, we have a new version and such has changed and it's really cool. So I agree, right? Done mindlessly, any form of customer communication is spam, right? Sure. I mean, banks are the worst spammers of the world. They send me physical paper in front of my doorstep. I don't remember the last time I opened a physical envelope that has promised me that this will change your life. Really. Sometimes you don't even open physical bills. You rather open PDFs, right? Sure. But push will go that way. The rule of thumb is if you are not segmenting and if you're not data driven, and I think that's a very valuable point. If you base your push notification basis, the user has launched my app once, but did not get to search, can I encourage the user that, hey, you're missing out on all this amazing world, right? He could send a push notification saying the user launched the app, but only browsed less than 5 stories. Yeah. So that, do you know that he could send a notification saying that within a minute, you can get the full gist of the day's news, right? And that notifications have deep links, right? Yeah. So that's another cool thing about notifications is that you don't really require the user to go through those first 5, 6 steps. You can have a notification that takes a user to the correct context where the user gets immediate value. Sure. And those push notifications will never be spammy. Got it. Think about it. You probably send about 100 push notifications a day if I'm subscribed.
No, quite less.
No, but okay.
So we are also our users have been telling us that we use your product because you don't spam me off with notifications, or a lot of notifications.
But then there are news apps where people read the news completely on push notifications.
You're mentioning that, yeah.
Yeah,
Both behaviors exist.
So if you could say that case, that'll be really good one. So there is a news app which Kuldeep was sharing. So I want everybody.
It's a very cool app, right? I mean, again, won't name names, but it's a very small TV channel, and they have 200, 300 downloads, right? Who downloads a TV channel's news app, right? So they have this app. It's a very few KBs, and they don't really deliver news. Every headline of the day, they send us push notifications. They have been growing 150% week on week in number of downloads because people tell other people that why you're reading news when your news is delivered to you and all you have to do is swipe it away. Now again, it's probably a counterpoint to what you say, but I still say this again and again to everybody that the current, today we have about what, 150 million connected users, meaningfully connected mobile users. Now these are early adopters. These people are people, who bought expensive phones, but we're a nation of 1 billion people, right? There is still a big market out there. The current, there are a lot of people who leave reviews. But the very fact that people who leave reviews is a sign that those people are educated enough to leave reviews and meaningfully engage, right? That itself is a biased sample. My view is that while you don't want to be spamming them, but there is a huge market for people who want to consume content without having to bother about downloading an app. Imagine if your app is 400 KB. Most people will download it because there's not much cost to download, and all the content is available in the push notification folder. It's a cool idea. It works for some people. Won't work for everybody.
Sure.
It won't work for a bank.
Sure.
But it could work for, and I'm sure if you look in your data, you'll have a lot of people who probably don't launch the app, but look at a notification, interesting news, and swipe away. I mean, and a lot of news apps actually do that. They, they like notifications. You don't mind notification. You wouldn't mind notification from a cab app that your cab has arrived.
Sure, sure.
That's a wanted notification, right? So I think it's basically that, if your notification is delivering value, it's not spam and people don't mind it. That's what the notification area is for, effectively. Right?
Great, great. So I think, I would like to bring out audience questions.